left by their children. A couple discovers an entrance in the middle of the mountain, and everything changes. Gerald and Mary Ellen never imagined that after 42 years of marriage, 3 children raised with so much love, and a lifetime of dedication to family, they would be standing there by the side of the road with just 2 old suitcases in their hands. Their children's car had disappeared around the bend just minutes before, taking with it not only their belongings, but also the last hope that they still mattered to anyone. It was when the rain began to fall that Gerald held Mary Ellen's hand firmly and pointed to a rock formation on the mountainside. There, half hidden among the moss-covered stones, was an opening that seemed to lead into the rock, as if nature itself had created a shelter for the desperate like them. "Mary, look over there," said Gerald, his voice hoarse from crying so much during the silent journey that had brought them to that desolate place in the Appalachian Mountains. "It looks like there's an entrance there in those rocks." Mary Ellen wiped her eyes with the sleeve of the yellow coat she had worn for over 10 years, a birthday gift from her youngest daughter, and followed her husband's gaze. The rain was getting heavier, and they had nowhere to go. Their children had left them there, saying it was an outing that they would return, but deep in her heart she knew it was a lie. "Come on, Gerald," she murmured, picking up one of the suitcases. "At least let's get out of this rain." Gerald, at 72, still had strength in the arms that built the house where they raised their children, where they planted the garden that fed the family for decades. He picked up both suitcases as if they were light and began climbing the steep trail toward the opening in the rock. Mary Ellen, 3 years younger, climbed behind him with cautious steps, her grey hair wet from the rain sticking to her tired face. The entrance was larger than it seemed from afar. Once inside, they discovered it was a natural tunnel in the rock, lit by candles placed in small niches in the walls. The smell of melted wax mixed with the dampness of the stone created a strange, almost mystical atmosphere. "There are people here, Mary," whispered Gerald, observing the lit candles. "Someone lives in this place." They walked slowly through the tunnel, their footsteps echoing softly on the damp stone. The corridor stretched for about 50 meters before opening into a natural clearing completely surrounded by mountains, as if it were a secret valley carved into the heart of the range. What they saw left them speechless. There, distributed seemingly randomly throughout the small valley, were 12 small houses built of stone and wood, each with its own garden and a yard bordered by low fences. Smoke rose from the chimneys of some, and colorful clothes swayed on the clothesline despite the continuing rain. It was as if they had discovered a village lost in time. "Good afternoon," said a voice behind them. Gerald and Mary Ellen turned and saw a man of about 50, tall and thin, with his arms crossed and a not-so-friendly expression on his face. He wore simple but clean clothes, and there was something in his eyes that suggested deep distrust. "Are you lost?" asked the man, his voice carrying a natural authority. "We—" began Mary Ellen, but her voice failed. How to explain they were abandoned by their own children? "We were escaping the rain," said Gerald, trying to maintain his dignity. "We found the entrance there and—" "I'm Howard," interrupted the man. "And this place is not for curious tourists. You need to leave now." The coldness in Howard's voice was clear, but before Gerald could respond, a woman with brown hair tied in a bun came running from one of the nearest houses. "Howard," she shouted, "what is this? Can't you see they're elderly and soaked?" The woman, who appeared to be about 45, had a gentle face and kind eyes. She wore an apron over a simple dress, and her hands were dusty with flour, as if she had been interrupted while preparing a meal. "Elizabeth, you know the rules," said Howard firmly. "Outsiders bring trouble. It's always been that way." "Trouble?" retorted Elizabeth, moving closer to Mary Ellen and Gerald. What trouble could a rain-soaked elderly couple possibly bring? Gerald observed the small confrontation between the two and realized there were power dynamics at play that he didn't fully understand. Other people began to emerge from their homes, drawn by the raised voices. Men and women of various ages, all in simple but well-kept clothes, all looking at the newcomers with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Please," said Mary Ellen, her voice almost a whisper, "we don't want to bother anyone. We just needed to get out of the rain." Elizabeth looked at her and then at Gerald. noticing the two old suitcases they carried and the poorly disguised desperation on their faces. "You have nowhere to go, do you?" asked Elizabeth softly. The silence that followed was answer enough. Mary Ellen lowered her eyes, feeling the weight of shame. At 69, she was there like a beggar, depending on the charity of strangers. "Elizabeth," said Howard, in a warning tone, "don't get involved in this." "I'm already involved," she replied, moving closer to Mary Ellen. "What are your names?" "I am Mary Ellen, and this is my husband, Gerald," she answered, finding a little courage in the woman's kindness. "Welcome," said Elizabeth, completely ignoring Howard's disapproving look. "Come, I'll make you some hot tea." "Elizabeth," protested Howard. "Howard," she turned to him with eyes flashing. "Have you forgotten how you got here? How you were when I and the others took you in? Now you would deny the same kindness to those in need? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot, as we're just starting out now. Continuing. Elizabeth's comment hit Howard like a slap. His shoulders slumped slightly, and something in his expression softened, but he didn't give in completely. "Just for tonight," he said finally. "Tomorrow they leave." Elizabeth nodded, knowing it was already a victory to get this much. She gestured for Gerald and Mary Ellen to follow her toward her house, a small but cozy building with windows adorned by floral curtains and a small garden in front. Other residents watched them pass, whispering among themselves. Gerald noticed children peeking from windows, and that not all the looks were hostile. Some seemed genuinely curious, others showed sympathy, but there were also those who clearly agreed with Howard's position. Elizabeth's house was simple but very clean and tidy. The small living room had a wooden table in the center, surrounded by chairs that had clearly been handmade, and the walls were decorated with embroidered cloths and small shelves with jars of preserves and dried herbs. "Sit down," said Elizabeth, indicating the chairs. "I'll make some lemon balm tea. It helps to calm the nerves." Mary Ellen sat down slowly, still clutching her suitcase tightly, as if it were her only link to her previous life. Gerald placed his suitcase on the floor and looked around, noticing the details that indicated the house had been lived in for a long time. There were photographs on an old dresser, showing a younger woman with two small children. "Your daughters?" asked Mary Ellen softly, following his gaze. Elizabeth stopped fussing with the cups and turned with a sad smile. "They were," she said simply. "They live in the city now, with their father." Her tone suggested a painful story behind this separation, but Mary Ellen didn't want to press. She knew well the pain of having distant children, though her own situation was even worse. "And you?" asked Elizabeth, bringing a tray with 3 steaming cups of tea. "How did you get here?" Gerald and Mary Ellen exchanged glances, unsure how to answer. The truth was too humiliating, but lying seemed wrong after the kindness they were receiving. "Our children," began Gerald, but his voice failed. "They brought us for a drive in the mountains," continued Mary Ellen, unable to tell the whole truth. "But they had to go back to the city and we were left behind." It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Elizabeth nodded as if she understood there was more to the story than they were willing to tell. "I understand," she said, serving the tea. "Sometimes life takes us to places we didn't expect to be." The tea was delicious and hot, warming not only the body, but also bringing a little comfort to the soul. They drank in silence for a few minutes, listening to the rain beat on the roof and the muffled sounds of community life coming from outside. "Elizabeth," said Mary Ellen finally, "may I ask, how did you all end up here? This place is so isolated." Elizabeth smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. "It's a long story," she said, "but in short, all of us here were abandoned in some way, rejected, forgotten. This valley became our refuge." "Abandoned," repeated Gerald, feeling a lump in his throat. "Howard lost his job at 50, and his family wanted nothing to do with him. Dorothy in that yellow house was evicted when her son sold the house she lived in. Mr. Arnold from the blue house was put out by his daughter-in-law when his wife passed. Each of us has a story of rejection." Elizabeth's words hit Gerald and Mary Ellen like physical blows. They were not alone in their pain. There were others who had been through similar situations. "And how do you survive here?" asked Mary Ellen. We grow our own food, keep some chickens, have a goat for milk. Howard knows these mountains well and taught us how to live off the land. It's not easy, but it's better than living where we're not wanted. The conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Elizabeth got up and opened it, finding a man of about 60 with a face red with anger. "Elizabeth, what's this about you sheltering strangers?" he said without ceremony. "Good evening to you too, Arnold," replied Elizabeth with irony. "Come in, don't be rude." Arnold entered, stomping firmly, and looked at Gerald and Mary Ellen as if they were dangerous intruders. "Howard said they're leaving tomorrow, but I think that's foolish of you," he said, addressing Elizabeth. "You don't know who these people are. They could be spies from the city hall or people sent by the landowners." "Spies?" said Gerald, almost laughing at the absurdity of the accusation. "Sir, we're retirees. We were just escaping the rain." "That's what they all say," retorted Arnold. "But then we find out they came to evict us from here." "Arnold," interjected Elizabeth, "you're being paranoid. Look at them. They're an elderly couple with 2 old suitcases. What threat could they pose? The threat of bringing other people, the threat of telling about this place to those who shouldn't know. We have limited food, Elizabeth. Every extra mouth means less for us." The argument was heating up when more people appeared at the door. Apparently, the arrival of the strangers had stirred up the whole small community. "What's all this commotion?" asked an elderly woman with completely white hair and a sweet face. "Mrs. Dorothy," said Elizabeth, "Arnold is worried about our visitors." Dorothy looked at Gerald and Mary Ellen with kind eyes and approached them. "What are your names, dears?" "Gerald and Mary Ellen," he replied, standing up politely. "Pleased to meet you," said Dorothy with a warm smile. "I'm Dorothy May, but you can call me Mrs. Dorothy." The older woman's kindness contrasted completely with Arnold's hostility, creating a clear division in the small crowd that had gathered in Elizabeth's house. Gerald quickly counted 6 people there: Elizabeth, Howard, who had arrived behind the others, Arnold, Dorothy, a young woman holding a child, and a middle-aged man who hadn't spoken yet. "Let me ask you something," said the young woman, adjusting the baby in her arms. "Do you have children?" The simple question hit Mary Ellen like a punch in the stomach. She looked at Gerald, who nodded encouragingly. "We have 3, she said, her voice choked. 2 sons and a daughter." "And where are they now?" asked Howard, his voice still laden with suspicion. The silence that followed was deafening. Mary Ellen began to cry softly, and Gerald put his arm around her shoulders. Gerald began, but stopped. "How to explain the humiliation of being abandoned by your own children? They brought us here and said they'd come back," murmured Mary Ellen. "But I think they're not coming back." The truth hurt too much to be spoken completely, but the little they managed to say was enough for those present to understand the situation. Dorothy's face filled with compassion, while Howard and Arnold seemed slightly uncomfortable. "Dears," said Dorothy softly, "were you abandoned?" Mary Ellen nodded, unable to speak. The word abandoned echoed in the small room like a death sentence on their dignity. "Then you've come to the right place," said the young woman firmly. "Here, we all know how that hurts." "We can't just accept everyone who shows up here, Jennifer," protested Arnold. "We have our own families to take care of." "What families, Arnold?" Jennifer retorted bitterly. "Our children rejected us, remember? That's why we're here." The man who hadn't spoken yet finally spoke up. "Jennifer is right," he said in a calm but firm voice. "If we don't help each other, who will help us?" "Thank you, Dennis," said Elizabeth, addressing the man. "That's exactly what I think." Howard looked at the faces around him and realized opinion was divided. Some clearly sympathized with Gerald and Mary Ellen. Others supported Arnold's more cautious position. "All right," he said finally. "We'll have a meeting tomorrow to decide this properly. For today they can stay at Elizabeth's house." "Thank you so much," murmured Mary Ellen. "Don't thank us yet," said Howard. "Tomorrow you might still have to leave." After the other residents left, Elizabeth showed Gerald and Mary Ellen a small room at the back of the house. It was simple, with a double bed, an old dresser, and a small window overlooking the backyard. "It's not much, but it's clean and warm," she said. "Tomorrow we'll talk more." "Elizabeth," said Mary Ellen, holding the woman's hand, "why are you doing this for us?" Elizabeth looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Because I know what it's like to be rejected by those you love most," she said simply. "And I know how important it is to have someone who cares when the whole world turns its back on you." That night, lying in the small but comfortable bed, Gerald and Mary Ellen whispered about everything that had happened since they were left on the road. "Gerald," murmured Mary Ellen, "do you think our children will really come back?" Gerald took a long time to answer. He knew his children well and knew that when they said they'd come back, they were lying. The way they avoided looking him in the eyes during the trip, their hurry to leave, the hugs that were too quick, everything pointed to a final goodbye. "I don't know, my love," he finally said, not wanting to hurt her more. "But at least for today we are safe and dry. Those people we met, they're good folks, right? They seem to be. Elizabeth especially, she has a good heart. And did you see how they all went through the same thing we did? Children who abandoned their parents?" "I did. It makes you think maybe it's not our fault, right? If so many people have been through it, maybe it's a problem with the times we live in." Mary Ellen sighed, trying to find some comfort in her husband's words. "Gerald, I'm afraid of what will happen tomorrow. What if they decide we have to leave?" "Then we'll leave," he said with more determination than he truly felt. 42 years together, Mary. We've been through worse and always managed. But now it's different. We're old. We have no money, no home." "We have each other," he interrupted, pulling her closer. "As long as we have each other, we'll figure something out." The next morning they woke to the smell of coffee and fresh bread. Elizabeth was already in the kitchen preparing breakfast, and through the window they could see movement in the other houses in the valley. "Good morning," Elizabeth said cheerfully. "Did you sleep well?" "Very well, thank you," replied Mary Ellen. "How long has it been since you had overnight guests?" Elizabeth stopped stirring the pot and smiled sadly. "Over 2 years, since my daughters stopped coming to visit." "Do they know where you are?" "They know, but they don't care. To them, I'm just a problematic mother who couldn't keep her marriage together and now lives isolated in the mountains." "How old are they?" 28 and 30, married with children. One lives in Charlotte, the other in New York." "And they don't bring the grandchildren to visit you?" Elizabeth shook her head, clearly emotional. "My ex-husband convinced them I'm unstable, that this place is dangerous for the children, so they think it's better to keep me away from my grandchildren." Mary Ellen felt a pang of recognition. She too had grandchildren she barely knew, grandchildren who had been gradually pulled away from her by her own children. "I also have 4 grandchildren I hardly know," she confessed. "The kids always made excuses not to let them stay with us." "It's always like that," said Elizabeth bitterly. "They think they know what's best for the children, but they forget that grandparents have love to give too." Gerald appeared in the kitchen after washing his face in the small but clean bathroom. "Good morning, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for your hospitality." "You're welcome. Sit down. Coffee is ready." They had coffee with homemade bread and blackberry jam that Elizabeth had made with fruit picked from the mountain. It was simple, but delicious. During breakfast, Elizabeth explained a bit more about the community's organization. "We are 12 families in total," she said. "Well, actually, 11 families and Howard, who lives alone. Each family takes care of their own house and crops, but we also have community projects. The big garden near the creek, the chicken coop maintaining the roads." "Roads?" asked Gerald. "We have some paths within the valley that need to be kept clear. And there's also the trail that leads to the nearest town for when someone needs to go get supplies or medicine." "What town is that?" "Gatlinburg. It's about 9 miles from here, but on foot through the mountain trail it takes about 4 hours. Howard goes there once a month with the donkey, brings what we can't produce here." "And how do you get money to buy things?" "Jennifer does crafts that are sold in town. Some women here know how to embroider and make pieces that are also sold. Dennis, whom you met yesterday, is very good with wood and makes custom furniture. We get by." The conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Howard, accompanied by Arnold and 2 other people whom Gerald and Mary Ellen had not met the previous night. "Elizabeth, may we come in?" Howard asked formally. "Of course, come in." The group entered the small living room, creating a tense atmosphere. Howard naturally assumed the position of leader. "Gerald and Mary Ellen," he said, addressing the couple, We talked this morning and we would like to ask a few questions before making a decision about you staying here." "Of course," replied Gerald, trying to maintain his dignity despite the humiliating situation. "First, do you have any money? Any retirement pension, any source of income?" The question was direct and painful. Gerald looked at Mary Ellen before answering. "I receive a small Social Security pension," he said. "I worked my whole life as a bricklayer. Mary also receives one. She worked as a housekeeper for over 30 years. "And where is that money deposited?" "In the bank in the town where we lived, but our children also had access to the account to help us with shopping." "Had?" asked Arnold with interest. "We don't know if we still have access to the money," admitted Mary Ellen with shame. "The children took care of everything for us." The man who had not yet been introduced shook his head in disapproval. "Typical," he murmured. "The children take control of the parents' money and then get rid of them." "Raymond," said Howard in a warning tone. "Sorry," said Raymond. "I'm Raymond. I live in the greenhouse over there across the way, and I've been through a similar situation." "Second question," continued Howard. "Do you have any useful skills? Anything you can contribute to the community?" "I know how to cook, embroider, tend a garden," said Mary Ellen quickly. "I worked in family homes my whole life. I know how to do a little bit of everything." "And I'm a bricklayer," said Gerald. "I also know a bit of carpentry, plumbing, basic electrical work. I was always the family handyman." The four men exchanged glances. It was clear they could be useful to the community, but that didn't resolve all the concerns. "Third question," said Howard, "and the most important one. If we let you stay here, can you guarantee you won't tell anyone about this place? Can you guarantee you won't bring trouble to us?" "Howard," Elizabeth interjected, "who are they going to tell? To whom? Didn't you see they were abandoned just like us?" "Elizabeth, let me conduct the conversation," said Howard firmly. "Gerald, can you answer?" Gerald looked at each of the serious faces before him and then at Mary Ellen. He understood this was the question that would determine their fate. "Mr. Howard," he said with all the sincerity he could muster, "if you let us stay here, I give you my word and my wife's word that we will protect this place as if it were our own. Because it would be ours. You would be our family, and family we protect. We don't harm." The answer moved even Arnold, who had been the most resistant to their presence. Raymond nodded approvingly, and the fourth man, who still hadn't introduced himself, also seemed satisfied. "I'm Anthony," said the fourth man, "and from what I've heard so far, I think they should stay." "Anthony," said Arnold, "you've always been far too trusting of strangers." "And you've always been far too suspicious," retorted Anthony. "How many times have you been wrong about people here?" Howard raised his hand to interrupt the discussion. "Let's vote," he said. "All in favor of allowing Gerald and Mary Ellen to stay as provisional members of our community?" Elizabeth immediately raised her hand, followed by Raymond and Anthony. Howard hesitated for a moment before raising his as well. Arnold was the only one who did not vote in favor. "In favor, 4 votes," announced Howard. "Opposed, 1 vote. The decision is made. You may stay." Mary Ellen collapsed into tears of relief, and Gerald felt as if an enormous weight had been lifted from his shoulders. For the first time in days, they had a place to call home. "Thank you so much," said Gerald, his voice choked. "You won't regret it." "We hope not," said Howard. "But understand, you are on probation. If you cause any trouble, you're out." "We understand perfectly," said Mary Ellen, drying her eyes. "Now let's settle the practical matter," said Elizabeth. "You'll need a house of your own." "There's the house of the late John," suggested Raymond. "It's been empty for 6 months." "That house needs a lot of repairs," said Anthony. "The leaks, the roof—" "I can fix it," said Gerald quickly. "If you give me materials and some tools, I'll make it like new." "Well, look at that," said Howard with a half-smile. At least he didn't come empty-handed. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. In the following days, Gerald threw himself headfirst into repairing the small house that would be theirs. It was a simple stone and wood structure, with 2 small bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a bathroom. The roof really did need a lot of work. There were leaks in several spots and some of the floorboards were loose. Mary Ellen, in turn, quickly integrated into the women's activities of the community. She helped in the community garden, learned to make the bread that all the families shared, and quickly stood out for her cooking and organizational skills. "Mary Ellen," said Dorothy one afternoon as they worked together in the garden, "you have a special way with plants. Look how the tomato plants are growing since you started tending to them." "Oh, Mrs. Dorothy, I've always kept a garden at home," replied Mary Ellen, pulling some weeds. "It's therapy for me." "Do you miss your old home?" Mary Ellen stopped working and looked at the mountains surrounding the valley. "I do and I don't," she said thoughtfully. "I miss the house, but the people who lived there, I don't know. I think they hadn't considered me part of the family for a long time." "How so?" "In recent years I lived in the house but seemed invisible. The children would visit but barely spoke to me. The grandchildren grew up without really knowing me. I was just the old woman who lived in the back room and whom they had an obligation to tolerate." Dorothy nodded understandingly. "I know how that is," she said. "When my son sold my house, he said it was for my own good, that I couldn't take care of a big house alone anymore. But really he just wanted the money from the sale." "The worst part isn't the lack of money or a house," Mary Ellen continued. "The worst is the lack of love, you know. The feeling that you don't matter to anyone anymore." "That's why this place is so special," said Dorothy, looking around the valley. "Here we matter to each other. Here we are real family." Meanwhile, Gerald was on the roof of the house, replacing broken shingles with the help of Dennis and Raymond. "Gerald," said Dennis, handing him another shingle, "you really know your way around construction. This house is going to be better than it was before." "I like working with my hands," replied Gerald, carefully positioning the shingle. "Always have. It's good to see the result of your work, you know." "I sure do," said Raymond. "I was an accountant before coming here. I spent all day crunching numbers on the computer. I never saw a concrete result of my work." "What happened that made you end up here, Raymond?" Raymond stopped working and looked at the horizon. "My wife passed away 3 years ago," he said. "Cancer. After she was gone, my children decided I was too depressed and sad to live alone. They wanted to put me in a nursing home. When I refused, they stopped talking to me." "That's outrageous," said Dennis. "Yeah," agreed Raymond. "For them, it was easier to forget me than to help me deal with the grief. One day they simply packed my things and said there was an opening at the nursing home. That's when I ran away." "And how did you find this place?" "Russell," said Raymond, referring to one of the residents Gerald hadn't properly met yet. "He found me sleeping under a bridge in Gatlinburg and brought me here." "How many of you came here running away from your own children?" asked Gerald. "Almost all of us," replied Dennis. "Howard lost his job, and his family said they had no obligation to support an unemployed man. Jennifer was kicked out of the house when she got pregnant out of wedlock. Russell was accused by his own son of stealing money from the family store. Most of the stories are similar." "It's incredible how cruel children can be to their parents," murmured Gerald. "Yeah," said Raymond. "But you know what I've learned? True family isn't the one you're born into, it's the one you choose. And I chose this one here." The work on the house progressed quickly with the help of several residents. In a week, the roof was fixed, the floor repaired, and Gerald had even built a small front porch. Mary Ellen, with the help of Elizabeth and other women, cleaned and organized everything, sewed new curtains and even painted the walls with leftover paint from other projects. "Our home," said Mary Ellen on the first night they slept there, looking around the small room. "It's been a long time since we said that with affection." "It really is ours," agreed Gerald. "No one can force us out of here. Do you think our children are looking for us?" Gerald took a while to answer. In the last few days, with all the activity of integrating into the community, they had hardly thought about their children. "I don't know, dear," he said honestly, "and to tell you the truth, I'm not sure it matters anymore." "How can it not matter?" "I mean, of course I still love them, I always will, but they made their choice when they left us on the road. Now we have to make our choice." "And what is our choice?" "To live, to be happy with the people who care about us, to stop expecting love from those who don't want to give it to us." Mary Ellen nodded, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. It was painful to accept that their children had truly abandoned them, but it was also liberating to stop living in hope of a reconciliation that might never come. In the second week in the valley, something happened that tested the limits of Gerald and Mary Ellen's acceptance in the community. Jennifer, the young woman with the baby, went into premature labor in the middle of the night. It was her second child and something was wrong. "Elizabeth," shouted Jennifer's husband, banging desperately on the door. "Jennifer is very sick. The baby is coming, but she's bleeding a lot." Elizabeth jumped out of bed and ran to Jennifer's house, followed by Gerald and Mary Ellen, who had been awakened by the shouts. The situation was critical. Jennifer was losing a lot of blood, and the baby was in the wrong position. Her husband, Russell, was desperate. "We need to get her to the hospital," said Elizabeth, "but there won't be time to get to Gatlinburg." "Let me see," said Mary Ellen, approaching the bed. "Mary Ellen, you're not a nurse," said Elizabeth worriedly. "No, but I've assisted with many births in my life. Back when I worked in people's homes, the ladies of the house always called me when there was an emergency." Mary Ellen quickly examined Jennifer and realized she was familiar with that situation. She had gone through it when she helped with the birth of one of her granddaughters years ago. "The baby has the umbilical cord wrapped around its neck," she said. "That's why there's a complication, but it can be fixed." With secure and gentle movements, Mary Ellen managed to disentangle the umbilical cord and help the baby be born, a small but healthy girl who cried immediately upon birth. "You saved my daughter," said Jennifer with tears in her eyes. "You saved them both." "It was nothing," murmured Mary Ellen, wiping the baby with a soft cloth. "Anyone would have done the same." But for the community, it was not just anything. The news spread quickly through the valley, and even Arnold, who had been the most resistant to the couple's presence, completely changed his attitude. "Mary Ellen," he said the next day, appearing at their door with a smile, "you are a blessing. If it weren't for you, we would have lost Jennifer and the baby." "Arnold, I just did what I knew how to do," she replied modestly. "Exactly," he said. "You did what you knew how to do to help our family, because now you are our family too." The incident created an even stronger bond between Gerald, Mary Ellen, and the other residents. They were no longer just accepted in the community, they were considered essential members of it. A week later, Gerald had his own opportunity to prove his worth. A strong storm hit the valley overnight, and in the morning they discovered the community kitchen had lost its roof and several houses had suffered damage. "This will take weeks to fix," said Howard, surveying the damage. "Not if we work together," said Gerald. "I'll organize the teams, and in a week everything will be sorted out." "A week?" doubted Arnold. "Gerald, you're being too optimistic." "No, he's right," said Dennis. "I worked with him on our house. He really knows how to organize construction work." Gerald took charge of coordinating the repairs and demonstrated a leadership ability that surprised everyone. He divided the men into teams, organized the distribution of materials, and supervised all the work with the efficiency of someone who had managed projects his whole life. In 5 days, not only were all the storm damages repaired, but several extra improvements were made. The community kitchen gained an extension, 2 houses were painted, and a new shed for storing tools was built. "Gerald," said Howard at the end of the work, "you have a natural talent for organizing people and projects. Would you like to be in charge of the community's maintenance work?" It was more than just a job offer. It was an acknowledgement that he had become an important piece in the community's structure. "It would be an honor," replied Gerald, but not everything was rosy in the small valley. As Gerald and Mary Ellen settled in and gained respect, they began to notice there were internal tensions in the community that weren't evident at first glance. One day, Mary Ellen noticed that Elizabeth was sadder than usual. "Elizabeth, did something happen?" she asked as they prepared bread together in the community kitchen. Elizabeth hesitated before answering. "My daughters sent a letter," she said finally. "It arrived yesterday with Howard when he went to the city." "And what did they say?" "That they're getting divorced, both of them, and that they won't be able to help me financially for a while." "They helped you?" "They sent a little money from time to time, not much, but it helped. Now that I won't have that anymore." "Elizabeth, you don't need financial help from them," said Mary Ellen firmly. You have your family here. We will take care of you." "It's different, Mary Ellen. They are my daughters. I raised them, sacrificed my youth for them, and now they are going through hard times and don't even think about coming to get me so I can help them with the grandchildren." "Perhaps it's better this way," suggested Mary Ellen softly. "You've suffered enough for them. Now it's time to live for yourself." But Elizabeth wasn't the only one dealing with unresolved family issues. Raymond had discovered, through a conversation with an acquaintance in Gatlinburg, that his youngest son was facing serious financial problems. "He's in debt up to his neck," Raymond told Gerald during a walk along the boundaries of the valley. "He lost his job, his wife is threatening to leave him, and he might lose the house." "And you're thinking of helping him?" asked Gerald. "I don't know. On one hand, he is my son. On the other hand, he was the one who rejected me when I needed him most." "Raymond, can I give you an opinion?" "Of course. You owe them nothing. You raised your children, gave them love, education, support. Now they are adults and the consequences of their choices are their responsibility." "But it's hard, Gerald. We love our children unconditionally." "Yeah, but they don't love us unconditionally, and the time has come for us to protect our own hearts." The conversation was interrupted by shouts coming from the direction of the valley entrance. Gerald and Raymond ran to see what was happening and found Howard arguing heatedly with two younger men who didn't belong to the community. "I already told you can't come in here," Howard was saying firmly. "This is private property." "And I already said we're not leaving without our parents," replied the taller of the two men. Gerald felt a chill in his stomach. Those voices were familiar. When he got closer, his worst suspicions were confirmed. "Marcus, Brian," he said, disbelieving. The two men turned and saw Gerald. They were his sons, 38-year-old Marcus and 35-year-old Brian. Gerald hadn't seen them in almost 2 months, since the day they had abandoned him on the road. "Dad," said Marcus, trying to sound relieved. "Thank God we found you. We've been looking everywhere." "You've been looking," repeated Gerald, his voice laden with bitterness. "Funny, because you left me on the road and said you'd come back." "Dad, there was a misunderstanding," said Brian. "We came back to get you, but you were already gone." "Misunderstanding?" Mary Ellen had come running upon hearing the voices. "You left us here and drove away. It was no misunderstanding." "Mom," said Marcus in a condescending tone, "you're confused. We would never abandon you. We came to take you home." "What home?" asked Gerald. "The home you sold?" Marcus and Brian exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable. "About that," began Brian. "About that what?" pressed Mary Ellen. "The house needed to be sold to settle some debts," admitted Marcus, "but we found a very nice place for you to live." "What place?" asked Gerald, already suspecting the answer. "A very good senior living home in Charlotte, with 24-hour nursing, recreational activities." "A nursing home?" interrupted Mary Ellen, her voice icy. "It's not a nursing home, Mom," said Brian defensively. "It's a specialized residence for the elderly." "It's a nursing home," she repeated. "You want to put us in a nursing home?" Throughout this conversation, other members of the community had gathered around. Howard, Elizabeth, Raymond, Dorothy, all watched the scene with expressions of growing indignation. "Listen here," said Howard, addressing Gerald's sons. "Your parents are capable adults who can make their own decisions. If they want to stay here, they stay." "And who are you?" asked Marcus arrogantly. "I don't recall asking for your opinion. I am the leader of this community, and you are being disrespectful to people I consider my family." "Family?" laughed Brian. "You're a weird cult hiding in the mountains. Our parents don't belong here." "That's where you're mistaken," said Mary Ellen firmly. "We do belong here. Here we are respected, loved, valued. Here we have a real family." "Mom, you're being manipulated," said Marcus. "These people certainly want something from you." "They do," agreed Gerald. "They want our company, our contribution, our affection, unlike you who only wanted to get rid of us." "Dad, that's not true." "Isn't it?" interrupted Gerald. "Then tell me, where is our daughter? Where's Christine? Why did only you two come?" Once again, the brothers exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Christine, she's busy with the kids," said Marcus evasively. "She doesn't even know you came after us, does she?" asked Mary Ellen. The silence was answer enough. Did Christine agree with the decision to put us in the nursing home? She pressed. Mom, it's not like that. Did she agree or not agree? She agreed, admitted Brian finally. We all agreed it was the best option. Mary Ellen felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. Knowing that her daughter, who had always been the most affectionate of the three, had also agreed to put them in a nursing home was devastating. So now we know where we stand, she said, her voice choked. The three of you decided you didn't want anything more to do with us. That's not it, Mom. Yes, it is, said Gerald. And you know what else? We've made our decision too. We're not going with you. Dad, you can't stay here, said Marcus. This is ridiculous. You are our parents, our responsibility. Responsibility, repeated Elizabeth, who had remained silent until then. What kind of responsibility is solved by locking your parents away in a nursing home? And who are you to interfere in our family? Asked Marcus aggressively. I am their family now, replied Elizabeth calmly. I am the one who cares for them when they're sick, who rejoices in their achievements, who shares meals with them every day. What are you? We are their children. No, said Raymond, stepping forward. You were their children. Now you are just two people who share the same blood, but who know nothing of love or respect. Look here, said Brian, losing his patience. We didn't come here to be judged by a bunch of strangers. We came to get our parents, and we're taking them, whether you like it or not. Oh, really? Said Howard, taking a step forward. And how exactly do you plan to do that? If necessary, we'll call the police, threatened Marcus. Go ahead, said Gerald calmly. And when they get here, I'll tell them how you abandoned us on the roadside, how you sold our house without consulting us, how you tried to force us into a nursing home. Let's see who ends up on the wrong side of the law. Marcus and Brian realized the situation wasn't going as they'd planned. They had come to the valley thinking they would find two helpless elderly people grateful to be rescued. Instead, they found people integrated into a community, defended by loyal friends and determined not to go back with them. Mum, Marcus tried one last time, using a softer tone. Don't you miss home? Your grandchildren? What grandchildren, Marcus? Asked Mary Ellen sadly. You kept them away from me years ago. They barely know who I am. That's not true. Yes, it is. When was the last time any of my grandchildren slept over at my house? When was the last time they asked me to tell a story? When was the last time they affectionately called me Grandma? Marcus couldn't answer, because the answer was that it had been many years ago. Here I have grandchildren, continued Mary Ellen, pointing to some children watching the scene from a distance. Children who seek me out for advice, who enjoy hearing my stories, who hug me with affection. Why would I leave that behind? Because we are your real family, said Brian desperately. Real family is proven by actions, not by blood, said Gerald. And you proved what kind of family you are when you abandoned us on the road. Dad? Enough, said Gerald with finality. You made your choice 2 months ago. Now we have made ours. We are not going with you. Period. You'll regret this, said Marcus angrily. When you get sick, when you need help, don't come looking for us. Don't worry, said Mary Ellen. We have our family here to take care of us. A family that chose us out of love, not obligation. Marcus and Brian left furiously, making empty threats about returning with authorities. But everyone knew they wouldn't come back. They had gotten what they really wanted, an excuse to never worry about their parents again. After their sons left, Gerald and Mary Ellen felt strangely relieved. It was as if a weight they had carried for years had finally been lifted from their shoulders. How are you feeling? Asked Elizabeth with concern. Free, said Mary Ellen without hesitation. For the first time in years, I feel truly free. Free from what? From guilt, from false hope, from unrequited love. Free to live our lives without waiting for crumbs of affection from those who don't care about us. That night, the community organized a kind of impromptu celebration. It wasn't exactly a party, but a moment of unity and affirmation that they were truly a chosen family. I want to make a toast, said Dorothy, raising her teacup, to Gerald and Mary Ellen, who showed us it's never too late to find our true family. And to all of us, added Howard, who discovered that family isn't who you're born to, it's who chooses to stay with you. Everyone toasted, and there were tears of emotion on many faces. It was a moment of collective healing, of people who had been hurt by their own relatives finding consolation and true love in each other. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. The months that followed were of prosperity and growth for the entire community. Gerald had become not only responsible for maintenance, but also a kind of advisor for other practical matters. His life experience and natural wisdom made him a sought-after person whenever someone needed to make important decisions. Mary Ellen, in turn, had taken over the coordination of women's activities. She organized a crafts group that produced superior quality pieces to sell in the city, significantly increasing the community's income. She also created an informal education system for the valley's children, teaching not only basic subjects, but also values like solidarity and mutual respect. One afternoon, while teaching one of the children to read, Mary Ellen was interrupted by Howard, who came running from the city with a worried expression. "Everyone!" he shouted to get everyone's attention. "Urgent meeting in the central square, now!" Everyone gathered quickly, realizing from Howard's expression that something serious had happened. "What is it, Howard?" asked Elizabeth. "I heard in town that there's an investigation into irregular land claims in this area," he said. "It seems someone has questioned our situation here." A murmur of concern spread through the crowd. "What kind of investigation?" asked Gerald. "Someone reported that people are living irregularly on the mountain lands. The county is sending inspectors to check the status of all the occupations in the region." "Do we have any documents for these lands?" asked Raymond. "Not exactly," admitted Howard. "When we arrived here 8 years ago, these lands were abandoned. We couldn't find out who the legal owner was." "And now?" asked Dorothy anxiously. "Now we need to prepare for the possibility that we might have to leave here," said Howard heavily. The news hit the community like a bucket of cold water. That place had become their true home. The idea of having to leave was devastating. "Is there any legal way to regularize our situation?" asked Anthony. "I can try to find out who the legal owner of the lands is," suggested Raymond. "I understand bureaucracy. Maybe I can negotiate something." "And if the owner wants to evict us?" asked Jennifer, holding her baby daughter in her arms. "Then we fight," said Gerald with determination. "We've built our lives here. We're not going to give up easily." In the following days, Raymond began making regular trips to Gatlinburg and neighboring towns, investigating the legal status of the lands. What he discovered was not encouraging. "The lands belong to a mining company from Charlotte," he reported at a nighttime meeting. The company had been inactive for years, but was recently bought by a group of investors. "And do they know we're here?" asked Elizabeth. "They know now. Someone made an anonymous complaint about trespassing." "Someone?" repeated Howard. "Who?" Raymond hesitated before answering. "From the information I gathered, the complaint was made by 2 men from outside the region. Men who said they were worried about elderly relatives being held against their will in some kind of cult." The silence that followed was heavy with understanding and anger. Everyone knew who had made the complaint. "Gerald and Mary Ellen's sons," said Elizabeth with an icy voice. "It seems so," confirmed Raymond. Mary Ellen felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. It was inconceivable that their own sons were capable of such cruelty. "They really want to destroy us," she murmured. "They won't succeed," said Gerald firmly. "We won't let them." "But Gerald," said Howard, "if the new owners want to evict us, they have the legal right to do so. We are squatters, technically speaking." "Then we stop being squatters," said Gerald. "Raymond, is it possible to try to negotiate buying the land?" "With what money?" asked Arnold. "None of us has enough money to buy land." "Maybe together we do," suggested Mary Ellen. "If each family contributes what they can." "Mary," said Raymond gently, "we're talking about an area of several hundred acres. Even if we pooled all our savings, it wouldn't come close to the necessary amount." The reality of the situation was becoming clear to everyone. They had found a home, a family, a purpose, but all of it was threatened by legal issues and the revenge of Gerald and Mary Ellen's ungrateful sons. "What if we spoke directly with the new owners?" suggested Elizabeth. "Explain our situation, show them we're taking good care of the land, that we're not causing any harm." "It might work," said Raymond thoughtfully. It's worth a try. The worst they can say is no. It was decided that Raymond and Gerald would go to Charlotte to try for a meeting with the company representatives. It was a long and costly trip for people of few means, but it was the only chance they had. The trip to Charlotte was a revealing experience for Gerald. It had been years since he had left the mountains, and seeing the hustle and bustle of the big city again made him realize how much he had changed. The noise, the pollution, the rush of people, all of that which had once been part of his normal life, now seemed strange and uncomfortable. "I don't know how I used to live in this chaos," he remarked to Raymond as they waited in the lobby of a commercial building. "I think the same thing," agreed Raymond. "You get used to the peace of the valley and can no longer imagine life in the city rush." Finally, they were seen by a company executive, a middle-aged man wearing an expensive suit with an air of superiority that immediately made them feel out of place. "Gentlemen," said the executive without bothering to introduce himself, "I understand you want to discuss the situation of the trespassing on our land in the mountains." "It's not exactly trespassing," Raymond tried to explain. "We are a community of people who settled on that land when it was abandoned." "Abandoned or not, it is private property," interrupted the executive, "and now we have plans for it." "What kind of plans?" asked Gerald. "Mineral exploration. The region is rich in iron ore and other precious metals. We will begin mining operations in 6 months. Gerald and Raymond exchanged glances, realizing the situation was even worse than they had imagined. It wasn't just a matter of property. It was a business matter involving millions of dollars. "Sir," said Gerald, trying to remain calm, "we are 12 families who have built their lives in that place. We have nowhere to go. Would it be possible to negotiate some compensation, or perhaps a small area where we could stay?" "Impossible," said the executive coldly. "The entire area will be used for mining. You have 60 days to vacate voluntarily. After that, removal will be forced." 60 days, repeated Raymond, incredulous. "It is enough time for organized people to pack their things and find another place to live." "And where are we going to find another place?" asked Gerald. "None of us have money to rent a house in the city." "That is not our problem," replied the executive indifferently. "You chose to trespass on others' land. Now deal with the consequences." Gerald felt a rage growing inside him. The coldness and lack of humanity of that man painfully reminded him of the attitude of his own children. "Do you have a family?" asked Gerald. "Pardon? Do you have a family? A wife? Children?" "I don't see how that is relevant to our discussion." "It is relevant because I want to know if you can sleep at night, knowing you are taking the home away from 12 families, including children and the elderly." The executive became irritated. "Look here," he said, rising from his chair. "I am not a social worker. I am a businessman. If you wanted security, you should have bought your own land." "With what money?" asked Raymond. "Do you know how much a plot of land costs these days?" "Again, not my problem. The meeting is over. You have 60 days. The trip back to the valley was silent and depressing. Gerald and Raymond knew they had terrible news to deliver to the community. "How are we going to tell them?" asked Raymond. "With the truth," replied Gerald. "They deserve to know exactly what our situation is." The meeting where Raymond and Gerald reported the outcome of the trip was one of the most difficult the community had ever faced. There were tears, anger, despair, and a general feeling of powerlessness. 60 days, repeated Dorothy with a choked voice. "In 60 days we lose our home, our community, our family." "No," said Howard with determination. "In 60 days we start over somewhere else." "Where?" asked Jennifer. "Where are we going to find another place like this?" "I don't know where," admitted Howard, "but we will find it. We built this community once, we can build another." "Howard," said Elizabeth softly, "it's not that simple. Some of us are no longer young enough or have the energy to start everything from scratch." It was true. Dorothy was over 70. There were other elderly people in the community, and even the younger ones had invested years building their lives there. "What if we fought?" suggested Anthony. "What if we refused to leave?" "And then?" asked Raymond. "They'll send the police, they'll force us out, we'll end up arrested or hurt. At least we'd die fighting for what's ours," said Anthony bitterly. "Anthony," intervened Mary Ellen, We won't accomplish anything with violence. And besides, there are children here. We can't expose the children to dangerous situations. The discussion went on for hours, but in the end they reached the inevitable conclusion: they would have to leave. The only question was where to go. "Everyone," said Gerald finally. "I know the situation seems impossible, but I want you to know one thing. These 2 years here were the best of my life, and of Mary's life too." "Ours too," murmured Dorothy. "So let's take that with us," continued Gerald. "Let's take the love, the unity, the mutual care we built here. That no one can take from us." "Gerald," said Howard, "what exactly are you proposing?" "I'm proposing that we don't separate, that we find another place where we can continue together as a family." "But where?" "I don't know yet, but we have 60 days to figure it out. In the following weeks, the community mobilized in a desperate search for alternatives. Raymond started traveling regularly again, this time looking for land available for purchase or rent. Howard used all his contacts in the region to try to find options. Other community members also got involved in the search. The news was not encouraging. Everything they found was beyond their financial means or didn't have the minimum necessary conditions to house 12 families. "What about this farm here?" asked Elizabeth, showing a newspaper ad. "Too expensive," replied Raymond, "and it's too far from any town." "What about this area here in the neighboring county? No water? It would be impossible to live there." The frustration was growing, and some community members began considering the possibility of separating and each family going its own way. "Maybe it would be better for each to try to manage on their own," suggested Arnold during a particularly discouraging meeting. "Don't say that," protested Elizabeth. "We are stronger together." "Elizabeth, be realistic. Where are we going to find a place that accommodates 12 families and that we can afford?" "I don't know, but we will find it." It was Dennis who brought the first truly hopeful news. He had met a farmer from the region who was going through financial difficulties and looking for a creative solution to his problems. "His name is Benjamin," reported Dennis. "He inherited a large farm from his parents, but doesn't have the money to run it alone. He's thinking of selling but can't find a buyer." "And how does that help us?" asked Howard. "He suggested a partnership. We would take care of the farm in exchange for housing. Part of the production would be ours, part would be his." It was an interesting possibility, but there were many questions to be resolved. Raymond offered to go talk to this Benjamin to better understand the proposal. "Where is the farm located?" asked Mary Ellen. "About 2 hours from here, near Asheville." "It's a large property with several buildings, but everything is somewhat abandoned." "Abandoned how?" "The houses need repairs, the land hasn't been cultivated for years, but it has potential. The community decided it was worth investigating." Raymond, Gerald, and Howard traveled to see the property and talk with Benjamin. Benjamin was a man of about 50, a widower, with 2 children who lived in the city and had no interest in the farm. He was clearly going through hard times, but was a good-hearted person. "Look," he said, walking the property with the 3 visitors, "I know the situation isn't the best. My wife took care of the house and I took care of the fields. After she passed, I kind of lost heart with everything." The farm really was abandoned, but Gerald, with his experienced eyes, could see the potential. "This land is good," he commented, crouching to pick up a handful of soil. "With work, it can produce well." "Yes, it can," agreed Benjamin. "My father grew everything here: corn, beans, vegetables, livestock." "And your proposal is exactly what?" asked Raymond. "You all come live here and run the farm. I keep 30% of the production, you keep 70%. I provide the seeds and some basic equipment, you provide the labor." "And housing?" "There's the main house where I live, which is big. There are also 3 smaller houses that need repairs, and we can build a few more if necessary." "Benjamin," said Howard, "we are 12 families. That would be about 40 people living here." 40 people. Benjamin made a thoughtful face. "That's a whole lot of people." "It is a lot of people," agreed Raymond. "Maybe it's better to forget it." No, interrupted Benjamin. "Let me think. 40 people working on a farm this size, the production would be huge. Even keeping only 30%, I'd earn much more than I do now with the land sitting idle." "Are you sure?" Yes, I am. You all seem like good, hard-working people. And to tell the truth, I was going a bit crazy from loneliness here. The proposal was good, but there was an important practical issue. The existing houses weren't enough to shelter 12 families, and building new houses would take time and money. About the houses, said Gerald, I can coordinate the repairs of the existing ones and the construction of others. We have people who know about construction. And materials. We could use wood from the farm itself, make adobe bricks. It's possible to build good cheap houses if you have the know-how. Benjamin was visibly excited by the prospect. You know what convinces me, he said. It's knowing I'll have people around again. This farm was always full of life. After my wife passed and the children went to the city, this place became a cemetery. The visit ended with a preliminary agreement. The community would have a week to think about the proposal and give a definitive answer. Benjamin, in turn, would consult a lawyer to draft a contract that protected everyone's interests. The return to the valley was much more lively than the trip to Charlotte had been. For the first time in weeks, there was a real prospect for the future. What did you all think of him? Asked Elizabeth during the meeting where the three reported on the visit. Good people, answered Howard. Honest, hard-working, lonely. I think it could work. And the farm? It's abandoned but has potential, said Gerald. With hard work in the first few months, we can turn that into a productive property. Hard work we're not afraid of, commented Dorothy. The problem is whether we'll be safe there, whether we won't end up in the same situation again a few years from now. Benjamin said he can make a long-term contract, explained Raymond, something like 10 years renewable. And if all goes well, he even considers selling part of the land to us in the future. The prospect was encouraging, but there was resistance. Some people had become so attached to the valley that they couldn't imagine living anywhere else. I don't know, said Jennifer. Here in the valley I feel safe. How will we know if it'll be the same there? Jennifer, said Mary Ellen softly. True safety we carry inside our hearts. It's not the place that makes the family. It's the family that makes the place special. But what if it doesn't work out? What if this Howard changes his mind? What if we get there and find out it was a mistake? Then we try something else, said Gerald with determination. What we can't do is stay here waiting to be forced out. The discussion continued for days. There were valid arguments on both sides. Some wanted to try the partnership with Benjamin. Others preferred to look for other alternatives. Some even considered accepting the community splitting up. It was a child who brought the missing perspective to resolve the issue. Emily, Jennifer's 8-year-old daughter, interrupted one of the discussions with a simple question. Aunt Mary Ellen, she said in her childish voice, if we go to the farm, will you all come too? Yes, we will, my dear. And will we still be a family? Of course we will. Then it doesn't really matter where we live, right? The important thing is to be together. The child's wisdom touched everyone present. An 8-year-old had summed up in a few words what they had been complicating for weeks. Emily is right, said Elizabeth. The important thing is for us to stay together. So is it decided? Asked Howard. Are we accepting Benjamin's proposal? The vote was unanimous. Yes. The last 15 days in the valley were intense. The community mobilized to pack belongings, organize the move and say goodbye to the place that had been home for so many years. Gerald and Mary Ellen spent a lot of time walking through the places that had become special to them. The house he had renovated with such care, the garden where she had planted herbs and vegetables, the small wooden bench where they used to sit and talk in the late afternoon. Will you miss it? Asked Mary Ellen on one of these walks. I will, admitted Gerald, but it's not a sad longing. It's a grateful longing. Grateful? Grateful for having had the chance to live here, to find this family, to discover that life can start over at 70. I feel the same way, she agreed. It's as if our true life began here, and it will continue on Benjamin's farm. On the last day, the community held a simple farewell ceremony. Each family planted a fruit tree in a small grove that already existed, as a way of leaving something good for those who came after. One day someone will eat from these fruits, said Dorothy, covering with soil the small jaboticaba seedling she had planted, and they might not even know it was planted with love by people who were happy here. When the trucks arrived to pick up the furniture and belongings, There were tears, but also expectation. They were leaving a home, but they were going to build another. The arrival at Benjamin's farm was a mix of hope and apprehension. The property was indeed large and had potential, but it was also in worse condition than they had imagined. "Wow," murmured Elizabeth, looking at the main house with several broken windows and peeling paint. "Don't be alarmed," said Benjamin, a bit embarrassed. "I know it doesn't look very nice, but with some repairs—" "Benjamin," interrupted Gerald with a smile, "we're not afraid of hard work. In 6 months this place will be unrecognizable." And that's exactly what happened. The community organized itself like never before. Gerald coordinated the construction and renovation teams. Mary Ellen organized the logistics for food and childcare, and each person contributed their specific skills. In 3 months, all existing houses were renovated. In 6 months, 4 new houses had been built. In 1 year, the farm was producing more than Benjamin had imagined possible. "You all are miracle workers," he said one afternoon, watching the green fields that were once abandoned land. "We are not miracle workers," replied Howard. "We're a family working together for a common goal." Benjamin, who had initially kept a respectful distance from the community, gradually integrated himself into it. He began joining the communal meals, participating in the meetings, and slowly became more a member of the family than a boss. "You know," he said to Gerald one night as they watched the children playing in the yard, "I didn't realize how important it was to have people around. These 2 years I spent alone here nearly killed me with sadness." "Loneliness is cruel," agreed Gerald, "especially when you've already had a life full of people. You saved me just as much as I saved you." "That's how it works in a real family," said Gerald. "Everybody looks after everybody." The success of the partnership was so great that Benjamin decided to formalize the situation permanently. 2 years after moving to the farm, he made a proposal that surprised everyone. "Folks," he said at a community meeting, "I've been talking to my lawyer about our situation here, and he gave me an interesting idea." "What idea?" asked Howard. "What if we formalized our partnership as a cooperative? Each family would become a partner, with equal rights to the property and production." The proposal was revolutionary. Instead of being employees or temporary partners, they would become co-owners of the farm. "Benjamin," said Raymond, "that would mean you'd be giving up exclusive ownership of the farm." "Not entirely. I would remain the majority partner, but you would have a real stake in the business, and more importantly, you would have permanent housing security." "Why would you do this?" asked Elizabeth. Benjamin looked around the room, seeing the faces of the people who had become his family. "Because you gave me something I thought I had lost forever," he said with emotion. "You gave me a family." The formalization of the cooperative took a few months to complete, but when it finally happened, it was cause for great celebration. For the first time in their lives, many of those men and women were landowners. "I never thought at 75 I'd have my own land," said Dorothy with tears in her eyes. "Our land," corrected Mary Ellen, "belonging to all of us." During the months of organizing the cooperative, something unexpected happened. Raymond received a visit from his youngest son, the one who had gotten into debt and was having financial troubles. "Father," said the young man, visibly embarrassed, "I need to talk to you." "Come in," said Raymond coldly, "but if you came to ask for money, you can leave." "I didn't come to ask for money," said the son. "I came to ask for forgiveness." Raymond was surprised. He hadn't expected this approach. Forgiveness for what? For treating you badly when Mother passed away. For trying to put you in a nursing home. For turning my back when you needed me most. Raymond studied his son's face, trying to detect if there was sincerity there, or if it was just another manipulation. "And why now?" he asked. "Why after 3 years are you asking for forgiveness?" "Because my wife left me," the son admitted with difficulty, "and she took my children, and now I understand how you felt when we abandoned you." "Ah," said Raymond bitterly, "now that you're going through what I went through, you understand." "Yeah, Dad. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness. I know I've done too much wrong to be forgiven, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry." Raymond fell silent for a long moment. Part of him wanted to send his son away, to make him feel the same rejection he had felt, but another part the part that had learned about forgiveness and true family in recent years, took pity. "Son," he finally said, "I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve the peace of not carrying a grudge." "Dad, but forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean things will go back to how they were before. I understand. Do you have a place to live? For now, I'm in a hotel in Gatlinburg. I'm trying to rebuild my life." Raymond looked at his son, seeing a broken man who was going through exactly what he had gone through years before. "You can stay here for a few days," he said, "but only for a few days until you get organized." "Dad, thank you so much." "Don't thank me yet. You'll have to convince the whole community that you won't cause any trouble. And if I think you're here for personal gain, you're out the same day." Raymond's son ended up staying at the farm for 2 weeks. During that time, he worked hard to help with the farm activities, trying in some way to make up for the years of neglect. "He seems sincere," Mary Ellen commented to Raymond one afternoon. "Maybe he is," Raymond replied, "but sincerity born of desperation doesn't always last when the situation improves." "That's true. But everyone deserves a second chance, don't they?" "Everyone does, yes, but I've learned not to expect too much from my children." Raymond's son ended up leaving after 2 weeks, but the experience was important for the whole community. It showed that forgiveness was possible, even if forgetting was not. Months later, it was Elizabeth's turn to receive news from her children. One of her daughters showed up unexpectedly at the farm, bringing one of the grandchildren Elizabeth barely knew. "Mom," said the daughter, clearly nervous, "I know I have no right to show up like this." "Yes, you do," replied Elizabeth, looking enchanted at the 6-year-old grandson hiding behind his mother. "You always have the right to come see me. I left his father," said the daughter, pointing to the boy, "and I'm having a hard time. I don't know where to go." Elizabeth looked at her daughter and grandson, feeling a mix of love and caution. She had dreamed of this moment for years, but now that it was happening, she didn't know how to react. "Would you like to come in? Have something to drink?" During the conversation that followed, it became clear that Elizabeth's daughter was truly in a difficult situation. The divorce had been messy, she was unemployed, and had nowhere to live with her son. "Mum," she finally said, "I know I have no right to ask after everything, but could we stay here for a while? Just until I get on my feet?" Elizabeth looked at her little grandson, who was playing timidly with some toys the other children in the community had lent him. Her heart melted. "Of course you can stay," she said, "but there are some conditions." "What are they?" "First, this is not a hotel. If you stay here, you participate in community life. You work, contribute, integrate." "I understand." "Second, I am not a babysitter. You are your child's mother. I am the grandmother. I will help, but the responsibility is yours." "Of course, Mom." "Third, if at any point you decide you want to leave, that's fine. But I will not accept you using my grandson as a bargaining chip to get things. If you leave, it's by your own decision, not to emotionally blackmail me." Elizabeth's daughter nodded to each condition, and it was visible that she was genuinely grateful for the opportunity. "Mom," she said with tears in her eyes, "I'm so sorry for everything, for abandoning you, for believing my father's lies about you." "You're forgiven," Elizabeth said simply. "The past is the past. What matters now is the future." The integration of Elizabeth's daughter and grandson into the community was surprisingly smooth. The boy quickly adapted to rural life, and the other children, while Elizabeth's daughter proved to be a dedicated worker. "Mom," she said one evening while helping Elizabeth prepare dinner, "I had no idea how happy you were here. I truly am. Happier than I've ever been. How did you manage to build all this?" "With love," Elizabeth answered simply. "When rejected people come together and decide to truly love each other, amazing things happen. I envy you." "Why?" "Because you have a real family. I spent years chasing after people who didn't really want me, while I rejected the only person who always loved me unconditionally." Elizabeth stopped chopping vegetables and looked at her daughter. "It's never too late to start over," she said. "If you want, you can be part of this family too. Even after everything I did? Especially after everything you did. People who never made mistakes don't know the value of forgiveness. During this period of changes and reconciliations, Gerald and Mary Ellen became increasingly central to the life of the community. He had taken on not only the coordination of maintenance work, but had also become a kind of mediator for personal matters. She, in turn, was sought out for both practical advice and emotional support. "Uncle Gerald," said Emily, now 10 years old, one afternoon as she helped him fix a fence, "don't you miss your children?" The question caught Gerald off guard. It had been a while since he had thought of his children with longing. "I do," he admitted, "but it's a different kind of missing." "Different how?" "It's a longing for what I thought they were, not for who they really are." "I don't understand." Gerald stopped working and crouched down to be at the girl's eye level. "Emily, do you know the difference between loving someone and loving the idea of someone?" "No. I thought I loved my children, but I really loved the idea that they were good people. When I found out they weren't, what remained was a longing for the illusion, not for them." "And is that bad?" "It's neither bad nor good. It's just the truth. And the truth, however painful, is always better than a lie." Emily nodded as if she understood, even if she didn't fully comprehend. "Uncle Gerald," she said after a moment, "I love you and Aunt Mary Ellen for real, not just the idea of you." Gerald felt his eyes fill with tears. "And we love you too, girl, for real." It was conversations like this that made Gerald realize how much his life had changed for the better. He now had real grandchildren who sought him out for love, not out of obligation. In the 5th year at the farm, something happened that tested the community's unity once again. Benjamin received an offer to buy the farm for an extraordinarily high price. An agribusiness company was interested in the property for a modern agriculture project. "Everyone," Benjamin said in a meeting, "I need to tell you about an offer I received." When he explained the details of the offer, there was total silence in the room. The amount offered was enough to make all of them financially comfortable for the rest of their lives. "How much would each family get?" Raymond finally asked. "With the division proportional to the cooperative shares, each family would receive between $150,000 and $200,000. It was more money than any of them had ever dreamed of having. "And would we have to leave the farm?" Dorothy asked. "The company wants the property free of occupants." "They would give us 6 months to find other places." "So it would be the same situation as the valley," said Elizabeth. "Only this time we would receive money." The community was divided. Some people saw the offer as an opportunity for financial security. Others feared repeating the pain of losing a home. "Folks," said Gerald during one of the discussions, "let's think carefully about this. Money we can spend, but family we can't buy." "But Gerald," argued Arnold, "with this money, each person could buy their own house, have their own life." "And live alone again?" asked Mary Ellen. "Go back to being strangers to each other?" The issue divided the community for weeks. There were valid arguments on both sides. The money represented financial security and independence. Staying together represented emotional and family security. It was during one of these discussions that something happened that changed everyone's perspective. Dorothy, the matriarch of the community at 82 years old, was hospitalized with heart problems. During the 10 days she spent in the hospital, the community took turns staying with her. There was always someone by her side, always someone making sure she didn't feel abandoned. "You are my angels," she said one night to Gerald and Mary Ellen, who were taking the overnight shift. "Mrs. Dorothy," said Mary Ellen, holding her hand, "you are our angel. It was you who taught us what it means to love without expecting anything in return." "I'm going to miss you all." "Don't say that," protested Gerald. "You're going to leave here and we'll have many more years together. Gerald, I am 82, my days are numbered, but I want you all to know that these 5 years with you have been the best of my life. Ours too, Mrs. Dorothy. Promise me one thing. Anything. Don't let the money destroy our family. No amount of money is worth more than the love you have built." Dorothy recovered and was able to return home, but her words kept echoing in everyone's minds. During her hospitalization, the community had realized how much they loved and needed each other. "Everyone," said Howard in a meeting after Dorothy's return, I had an idea about the company's offer. What idea? What if we negotiated a counteroffer? What if we offered to lease the farm to the company for a set period without selling? How so? They could use the farm for their projects for, say, 10 years. They would pay a high rent, and we would keep the property. After 10 years, we would reassess the situation. It was a clever idea. It would allow them to have income without losing the security of the property. Benjamin took the counteroffer to the company, which initially resisted, but ultimately accepted. The annual rent would be enough to ensure financial comfort for everyone, without destroying the unity of the community. "You did it," said Benjamin happily after closing the deal. "You got the best of both worlds." "We did it," corrected Gerald. "All of us together." With financial stability guaranteed, the community was able to invest in improvements that were previously impossible. They built a small but well-equipped school for the children, a community center for meetings and events, and even a small medical clinic. "Who would have thought," commented Elizabeth one afternoon, watching the children playing on the new playground they had built. 10 years ago, we were a bunch of outcasts. Today, we are a prosperous community." "We aren't prosperous because we have money," said Mary Ellen. "We are prosperous because we have each other." "That's true. The money only confirmed what we already knew, that a true family can overcome anything." It was during this time of prosperity and stability that Gerald and Mary Ellen received the news they least expected. Christine, the daughter who had never gone to look for them, appeared at the farm one Sunday morning. She was older, thinner, and there was something in her face that suggested years of regret and suffering. "Dad? Mom?" she said hesitantly, standing at the entrance to the house. Gerald and Mary Ellen were having coffee on the porch when they saw her. For a moment, none of the three knew what to say. "Christine," said Mary Ellen finally, rising slowly. "Mom," said Christine, her voice choked, I need to talk to you." "Come in," said Gerald, his voice laden with conflicting emotions. Christine entered the simple but cozy house and looked around, noticing the photos of the community family on the walls, the children's toys scattered about, the signs of a full and happy life. "You're doing well," she said, not as a question, but as an observation. "We are," confirmed Mary Ellen. "And you?" Christine began to cry. "No, Mom, I'm not well. I haven't been well for years." "What happened?" asked Gerald, even though he was still processing his daughter's unexpected presence. "Everything fell apart, Dad. My marriage ended, I lost the house, the boys went to live with their father in another state. I'm staying at a friend's place as a favor." "And your brothers?" asked Mary Ellen. "My brothers want nothing to do with me. They say I'm the one who should be taking care of you, that the problem is mine." Gerald and Mary Ellen exchanged a look. It was a complex and painful situation for everyone. "Christine," said Gerald calmly, "why did you come here?" "To ask for forgiveness," she said without hesitation. "To ask for forgiveness and to say you were right about my brothers. They are selfish and cruel, and I was a coward for agreeing with them." "And what do you want from us now?" asked Mary Ellen. "Nothing," Christine replied surprisingly. "I didn't come here to ask for help. I came to ask for forgiveness. I came to say I'm sorry and that I love you." "Christine," said Mary Ellen softly, "if you didn't come to ask for help, why are you here?" "Because I found out you were living on a farm and I wanted to make sure you were okay. All these years, I wondered if you were alive, if you were in need." "And if we were in need," asked Gerald, "then I would try to help however I could, even though I don't have much." Mary Ellen studied her daughter's face, looking for signs of falseness or manipulation. She found none. She saw only pain, regret, and genuine love. "Do you want to meet our family?" she asked finally. "Family? Our real family? The people who took us in when our blood children abandoned us?" Christine spent the day at the farm, meeting each member of the community and hearing their stories. As the day went on, she began to understand the scale of what her parents had built. "Mom," she said in the afternoon when they were alone, "I had no idea how happy you were. We truly are. And I had no idea how important you are to so many people. Everyone here is important to everyone. That's how a real family works. I envy you. Why? Because you found something I'm still looking for. A place where I truly belong. Mary Ellen looked at her daughter and felt genuine compassion. Christine, she said, do you want to stay for dinner? To get to know everyone better? May I? Of course. But first I need you to understand one thing. What? We forgive you. Your father and I forgive you completely. But forgiveness doesn't mean things will go back to the way they were before. I understand, Mum. You hurt our hearts deeply, and despite forgiveness, some wounds leave scars. I know, Mum. I don't expect you to trust me right away. Well then, let's have dinner, and you can stay the night too if you like. The community dinner was a revealing experience for Christine. She saw how her parents were respected and loved, how they actively participated in conversations, how the children sought them out for affection. Grandpa Gerald, said one of the children, tell the wolf story again. After dinner, my dear, Gerald answered affectionately. Christine realized her parents had found the grandchildren their own children never allowed them to have. Father, she said after dinner, can I speak with you in private? They walked to the porch, where Gerald usually sat to enjoy the sunset. What did you want to talk about? He asked. I wanted to apologize again. And I wanted you to know that I always loved you. Even when I agreed with my siblings, I knew I was wrong. Then why did you agree? Out of cowardice, out of fear of being alone against them, thinking it would be easier. And was it easier? No, she said with tears in her eyes. It was the hardest and most painful decision of my life. Not a day went by that I didn't feel remorse. Gerald looked at his daughter and saw the broken woman she had become. He felt no anger, only sadness. Christine, he said, I forgive you. But you need to understand that I can no longer live waiting for my own children to love me. I have found true love here, and I won't risk that for anything. I'm not asking you to risk anything, Father. I'm only asking to be part of your life again, even if it's as a distant daughter. As a distant daughter? As someone who calls from time to time, who visits when she can, who truly cares but understands she lost the right to be a priority. Gerald was surprised by the maturity of the answer. That I can accept, he said finally. Christine returned to the city the next day, but something had changed. For the first time in years, there was real communication between her and her parents. It wasn't the relationship from before, but it was a genuine relationship based on honesty. She began visiting the farm once a month, always respecting the boundaries they had established. She didn't ask for favors, didn't try to insert herself into family decisions, but kept in touch and showed genuine affection. Do you think she's really changed? Elizabeth asked Mary Ellen after one of Christine's visits. I think she learned, Mary Ellen replied. Life taught her what we tried to teach for years. That family isn't just blood, it's commitment and true love. And can you trust her? Completely? I don't know if I'll ever be able to, but I can have a cordial and caring relationship with her. Is that enough? It's more than I expected to have 5 years ago. The following years were of consolidation and growth for the community. With financial stability guaranteed by the farm's rental income, they could invest in education, health, and quality of life improvements. Gerald, now 78, remained active, but had passed some responsibilities to younger community members. Mary Ellen, 75, kept her energy for cooking and caring for the children, but had also delegated some tasks. You know, she said to Elizabeth one afternoon, as they prepared sweets for the community's summer festival. I never thought that at 75 I'd be living the best years of my life. Why not? Because I thought life was a downward slope, that after the children grew up and left home, all that was left was to wait for old age and dependence. And what did you discover? That life can restart as many times as we want, that true family is something we choose, that love has no expiration date. You've changed a lot since you arrived here. We all have. You too. Me. Elizabeth, when we met, you were a bitter woman who kept dwelling on the hurts from your children. Today, you are a fulfilled woman who has a daughter and a grandson who truly love you. It was true. Elizabeth's daughter had not only fully integrated into the community, but had become one of its most active and contributing members. "It's funny," said Elizabeth. "I spent years trying to win back my daughter's love. When I stopped trying and started living for myself, the love came naturally. It's always like that. Forced love isn't love. True love happens when we are being authentic." Around that time, the community received an unexpected proposal. The City Council of Asheville wanted to turn the farm into a model sustainable community for rural tourism. "It would be a way to show other people that it's possible to live in community," explained the tourism secretary during a meeting, "and you would receive extra income from tourism." The proposal divided opinions. Some looked favorably on the possibility of promoting their way of life. Others feared tourism would destroy the privacy and tranquility they so valued. "Everyone," said Gerald during one of the discussions, "let's think about what really matters. What made our community work was love and mutual respect. If tourism doesn't threaten that, it could be a good idea." "But how do we ensure it won't threaten it?" asked Dorothy. "By establishing clear rules," suggested Raymond. "Limited visiting hours, restricted areas, a maximum number of visitors per day. And most importantly," added Mary Ellen, "making it clear we are not a zoo. We are real people living a real life." After much debate, they decided to accept the proposal, but with strict conditions. Visits would be limited to twice a week, with groups of no more than 10 people, and always accompanied by a community member who would explain their life philosophy. The rural tourism project was a moderate success. It brought extra income to the community, but did not significantly disturb their routine. More importantly, it allowed them to spread their message about chosen family and unconditional love. "You have inspired our family," a visitor said to Mary Ellen during one of the tours. "We were thinking of putting my mother-in-law in a nursing home, but after hearing your story, we decided to find a way to care for her at home." "That's wonderful," replied Mary Ellen. "The important thing is to remember that an elderly person is not a burden. An elder is wisdom and experience that can contribute greatly to a family." During one of the tourist tours, something unexpected happened. Among the visitors was an elderly couple who seemed particularly interested in the community story. "Would you accept new members?" the woman asked at the end of the visit. "It depends," answered Howard, who was leading the group. "Why?" "Because we are going through the same situation you went through," said the man. "Our children want to put us in a nursing home, and we have nowhere to go." It was Albert and Rose, both in their 70s, married for over 50 years, abandoned by their 3 children who considered them a burden. "Do you have any skills you could contribute to the community?" asked Gerald, who had joined the conversation. "I am retired from the National Bank," said Albert. "I understand finance and administration. And I was a teacher my whole life," said Rose. "I can help with the children's education." The community gathered to discuss Albert and Rose's request. It had been years since they had accepted new members, and it was an important decision. "They remind me of us when we arrived in the valley," said Mary Ellen. "Lost, rejected, but with dignity." "I agree," said Elizabeth. "Everyone deserves a second chance." "But we are well established now," argued Arnold. "Is it worth risking our stability?" "Arnold," said Dorothy with her matriarchal authority, "have you forgotten that there was a time when you too needed a second chance? The vote was overwhelmingly in favor of accepting Albert and Rose. It would be a 6-month trial period, as always happened with new members. The couple's integration was surprisingly easy. Albert brought order and efficiency to the community's financial management, while Rose revolutionized the children's education with modern teaching methods. "You have been a blessing," said Benjamin to Albert, after seeing the most organized financial report the cooperative had ever had. "You are the ones who have been our blessing," replied Albert. "We had almost lost hope of finding a place where we could be useful again." The arrival of Albert and Rose marked the beginning of a new phase for the community. They became examples that there is always room for more love, more family, more people willing to commit to a common life project. In the 10th year of life on the farm, the community decided to hold a grand celebration. It was the anniversary of a decade of success, overcoming, and mutual love. 10 years, said Howard during the opening speech of the party. 10 years since we arrived here as refugees in search of a fresh start. The entire community was gathered in the main hall they had built for special events. There were over 50 people now, including children who had been born on the farm and grandchildren who had grown up there. I want to especially thank two people, continued Howard. Gerald and Mary Ellen, who came here fleeing rejection from their own children and taught us that true family is built with love, not blood. The applause was warm and emotional. Gerald, now 80, and Mary Ellen, 77, stood to receive the affection of the family they had helped build. "Everyone," said Gerald, his voice choked up. "When we arrived here 10 years ago, we were dead inside, rejected, humiliated, without hope. Today," continued Mary Ellen, "we are surrounded by true love. We have children who chose us, grandchildren who love us, a family that cares for us. And most importantly," said Gerald, "we learned that it's never too late to start over. That true love exists, even if it doesn't come from where we expected." During the party, Christine appeared with her two children who were now teenagers. It was the first time the grandchildren had seen the farm and their grandparents' community family. "Grandpa," said the younger grandson, impressed with everything he saw. "You live in this amazing place?" "Yes, I do, my boy," replied Gerald, "and this is where I am happiest." "Why did we never come before?" Christine and Gerald exchanged glances. It was a complicated question to answer without mentioning past mistakes. "Because sometimes life takes a while to show us where our true place is," said Gerald diplomatically. During the grandchildren's visit, Mary Ellen had the opportunity to truly play the role of a grandmother for the first time. She told stories, taught recipes, gave advice, and joined in games. "Grandma," said the older grandson, "you're very different from what I imagined." "How so, my dear? I thought a grandma was an old, boring person who just complained about life, but you're fun and interesting." Mary Ellen smiled sadly, thinking of all the years she had lost without knowing her own grandchildren. "A grandma can be fun sometimes, when she gets the chance," she said. "Why can't we come more often?" "You can come whenever you want," she replied. "The farm is your home too." The grandchildren's visit was a healing moment for the whole family. Christine saw her children genuinely connecting with their grandparents, and Gerald and Mary Ellen finally got to experience what it truly means to be grandparents. "Mum," said Christine before leaving, "thank you for not giving up on me completely." "Daughter," replied Mary Ellen, "we never completely give up on those we love. We just learn to protect our own hearts. I understand, and I want you to know you can count on me now, not as the daughter you raised, but as the woman I've become." "All right. And I want my children to know the real grandparents, not the distorted version I created in their heads. They are always welcome here." After Christine and the grandchildren departed, Gerald and Mary Ellen spent the night talking about how life had changed. "Did you ever imagine we'd have such a large, close-knit family one day?" asked Mary Ellen. "Never," admitted Gerald. "I thought family was only those you were born with." "Me too. But now I know that true family is who stays when things get tough. It's who celebrates your victories and consoles you in defeat. It's who loves you not for what you can do for them, but for who you are." They sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the stars through the bedroom window. "Gerald," Mary Ellen finally said, "if we could go back in time, would you change anything?" Gerald thought for a long moment before answering. "I would change the pain we went through," he said. "I would change the humiliation of being abandoned by our own children, but I wouldn't change where we ended up." "Why?" "Because if we hadn't gone through that pain, we might never have discovered this love. We might have spent our whole lives waiting for crumbs of affection from those who didn't value us. You're right. The pain brought us here, and here is where we belong." "Mary?" "Yes?" "I love you. I love you more today at 80 than I loved you at 30. Why? Because today I know our love is true. It passed the test of adversity, rejection, and starting over, and it grew stronger. I love you more today too," she said, "and I love our family, our life, our future." End of story. And now, dear listeners, we have reached the end of this moving story of new beginnings and true family. Tell us in the comments, What did you think of Gerald and Mary Ellen's decision to build a new family? Do you believe it's possible to find love and belonging at any age? Share your experiences and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more heart-touching stories.